You know all that stuff that occurred in the first episode? It turns out that none of it matters. Most everything that happened could be completely ignored and nothing would change. Because evidently, this is the show where the rules are made up and the points don't matter, except it's significantly less funny.
I'm glad to see you got a sense of humor.
I'm beginning to think that the writers on this show are deliberately trying to make this series as ridiculously contrived and frustrating as possible. To that end, this episode also gets a whole bunch of woke garbage in the form of amazing, strong female character behaving like a girl boss.
Be when it fits a woman.
Do you remember how I said that this series feels like it's using the video game method in order to tell the story? Well, continuing with that theme, this episode would be the equivalent of a boring cutscene mixed in with a few lame-ass QuickTime events. I wish I was kidding. The Mandalorian is bad, episode 2. And now we're in for a real treat because we open up back on everyone's favorite planet, Tatooine!
No! God! No! 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 Oh, please, God, no!
Because according to Disney, there are only 10 planets in the galaxy and 9 of them are Tatooine. I would laugh if it wasn't so pathetic. Seriously though, is there some sort of requirement that they must show Tatooine X number of times in a season? Or could we possibly go more than one episode without showing this overused, stupid desert planet?
Please, no more!
The situation's gonna get even dumber when it's revealed why Mando actually went to Tatooine. We'll get to that in a second. For now, we get to spend several minutes with the annoying mechanic lady who's talking to a customer, only to discover that she's been working with the Jawas in order to rob people. By the way, did you know that the mechanic lady banged a Jawa? That's a thing! It's not a joke! It's a real thing that happened! It was explained through dialogue in a previous season! Aren't you happy that you know that? Anyways, what's happening here is the Jawas go out and they steal a bunch of parts from some random guy's speeder, then the guy brings his speeder in to get it repaired, the mechanic lady charges him some astronomically high price, and then she just shares that payment with the Jawas who give her the parts back, and then they just reattach them to the speeders. Now, in previous seasons, the mechanic lady has been shown as kind of a sort of shady car salesman type person, but this is just complete scumbag behavior, and it's being played for laughs. Like, ha 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 ha, she's scamming all these people, and she's a completely shitty person, but isn't it funny? Oh yeah, she also banged the Jawa.
Stop it!
Then Mando shows up, continuing his stupid, pointless quest to look for a memory circuit for the IG droid, and she says that she doesn't have any. Mando says that he needs to rebuild IG because of exactly the reasons I explained in my previous video, where he wants to use IG as some sort of canary in a coal mine to test if the air is poisoned on Mandalore. Something that I pointed out, which was completely unnecessary because almost any droid would be able to handle that. You didn't specifically need to use the IG-11. Even if he did think that the droid was his friend or something, you could use any droid. In fact, Mando wouldn't even need to use a droid at all. There are all kinds of different devices that he could attach to his ship, or it could be used as a handheld or something like that, that would be able to test the air quality on Mandalore. You don't actually need a droid. The amount of contrived nonsense in this episode and the previous is genuinely frustrating, and trust me, we're gonna get a whole lot more of that in just a minute. Oddly enough, the mechanic lady then tells Mando that he doesn't need to repair the IG droid, and he can just use any one of the other droids like the astromech that she happens to have on hand. She offers to sell it to him, and Mando agrees almost immediately.
I have questions.
Remember how Mando spent the entire first episode insisting that he absolutely required IG-11 to be repaired because it was the only droid he could trust? Well, now he just completely changed his mind for no reason.
I don't get it.
And the thing is it's not even like she had to make any kind of compelling argument to him. He's just like, oh, I need the IG droid. And she's like, nah, you can just use the astromech. And he's like, yeah, I guess I can.
What?
So I have to ask, what the hell was the point of spending that entire first episode building up the idea that Mando absolutely needed IG-11, only to throw it away within the first few minutes of the second episode? What the fuck was the point? There is no consistency in this series. Character motivations, plot lines, story objectives, all of that are just picked up and discarded on a whim. The mechanic also tells Mando that the droid will be able to pilot his ship, which is something that's going to be used later on in the episode. Normally, this sort of thing is good, where you establish something earlier on, and then you use it later in the story. However, in this situation, requiring the Jawa Humper to tell Mando about this makes him look like a fucking idiot. And that's because astromech droids are some of the most common in the galaxy, and their main responsibility is helping to pilot small ships. The Rebel Alliance famously used them in their X-Wing. There is absolutely no way Mando would be unaware of this. So the line of dialogue is not really meant for him, it's meant for the audience, and it's to let you know that the astromech is capable of piloting the ship. Of course, the downside of this is by including this dialogue, it makes Mando look like an idiot. But don't worry, it gets worse. Mando flies to the Mandalorian system and he shows Goku a bunch of the planets on his scanners. He points to Mandalore and gives a little bit of backstory to Goku. However, during this, he also points to another planet in the same solar system and he says, "This is where we went to see Bo-Katan."
I'm sorry. What?
This is fairly stupid for a couple of reasons. First of all, let's trace Mando's recent path through the galaxy. In the previous episode, he traveled to planet Nevada in order to get IG-11, but was unsuccessful. Then he traveled to this system in order to meet with Bo-Katan to get some information about where the sacred waters would be located. Then he traveled all the way to Tatooine in order to look for a memory circuit for IG-11. Instead, he got the astromech droid, and now he has traveled back to the Mandalore system. Why? This is one of those stupid lazy writer things where they want something to happen, but they don't stop to consider whether or not it would make sense, because flying through the galaxy isn't free. It requires a significant amount of fuel to travel those massive distances between the stars. This was even an important issue in one of the previous seasons where Mando didn't have enough fuel for his ship, and he was kind of stuck in one location until he could afford to get more. So, for what possible reason would Mando fly all the way to the Mandalore system to talk to Bo-Katan, only to then travel all the way to Tatooine looking for droid parts, only to then go all the way back to Mandalore? Why?
What was I thinking? I was not thinking at all, apparently.
When I was watching the first episode, I was under the impression that Bo-Katan was located somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, but now learning that she's in the same system as the primary Mandalore planet, I am genuinely confused. Wouldn't it have made more sense for Mando to go to Tatooine first to do his droid part shopping, and then possibly to other planets wherever he needed in order to get the part that he needed to repair IG, or to get a replacement droid, whichever came first, and then, after that was done, he could go to the Mandalore system only once, and he could just stop off at the planet with Bo-Katan and say, "Hey, by the way, I'm about to go over to the Mandalore planet and check it out. Do you want to come? Can you tell me where the waters are?" and all that sort of stuff. So why would he go to her planet, ask her about the waters, and then just completely leave the solar system and travel halfway around the galaxy again? Why would he choose to waste a massive amount of fuel with repeated unnecessary trips all the way to the Mandalore system?
This doesn't make any sense.
Another thing to consider that's fairly stupid is the fact that Bo-Katan is completely unaware that the planet of Mandalore is habitable with breathable air. She had the makings of an army and a space fleet that was orbiting a planet in the same solar system, and not a single one of these stupid motherfuckers ever thought that maybe they should take a 10-minute drive down the road to check if planet Mandalore had breathable air again. They never did that. None of them. Not Bo-Katan, not any of the Mandalorians. I don't even know how many hundreds she had under her command at that time. No one, not a single one of them, decided to drive down the road to check if the planet was okay again.
What good are you? Do you have a brain?
Maybe this would have made sense if she was in fact out in the middle of nowhere, but finding out she's in the same solar system and has never gone to check on the planet is incomprehensible. It gets even dumber when you realize that this contrived nonsense is necessary in order to facilitate some even more contrived nonsense that's going to happen later in the episode. Mando flies his ship to the planet Mandalore, and as he's landing, he notices that there's a strong electromagnetic presence that somehow was caused by the Empire when they tried to destroy the planet. He says that this is going to prevent any kind of communication from leaving the planet. Essentially, it's a way of saying that he can't call for help if he happens to get into trouble. However, for some bizarre reason, communication on the planet still works perfectly fine, which doesn't make any sense. If there's a massive amount of interference that prevents communication off the planet, how is that interference not causing problems for the people who are on the planet? That interference would still be present. It would still stop them from communicating. But I guess that just doesn't matter.
That's just lazy writing.
After landing on the planet, he deploys the astromech droid. He wants it to go into one of the nearby caves to check if the air is breathable. And once again, I have to ask, why? In the real world, digging into mines can be dangerous if you hit pockets of gas. That was a very real concern. However, that is not the situation here. The concern that Mando has is from the attack that the Empire did. He believes that the weapons they used may have poisoned the air, and that's what he wants to check for. It's not something that might be trapped down in the mine shafts. Would it not then be possible to simply sample the air from his ship without ever having to step outside? There's simply no reason for the astromech droid to even go into the cave entrance.
I barely have a reason to care, and even I notice.
As the droid is approaching the cave entrance, it shows a little concern and starts making some of its beeping noises, to which Mando responds that it's going to be fine and that there shouldn't be any danger. Once again, I want to point out that he's talking to the droid using a communication system that shouldn't be working because of the massive amount of interference on the planet. But don't worry, it gets worse. Moments later, the droid signal disappears from Mando's scanners, and now he needs to go outside the ship and check for himself. He tells Goku not to worry because he's simply going to pressurize his helmet, which means that he won't be breathing in any of the potentially bad air.
What the hell are you talking about?
Hang on a second here, Mando. If you can pressurize your helmet so that you don't need to breathe in the air, then why the fuck did you need a droid? There are many levels of stupidity at work here. If Mando can pressurize his helmet and breathe clean air, then it doesn't matter if the air has been poisoned. He didn't need to use the astromech droid. He didn't need to use IG-11. None of that was necessary. He could have just pressurized his helmet and went himself the whole time. But what about Goku, I hear someone ask? Wouldn't Mando want to bring Goku with him to go and see the sacred water pool bathtub thing? Yeah, he probably does. But none of that changes the situation. If Mando arrives on the planet and the droid says the air is fine, then Goku can go with Mando. If the droid says that the air is poisoned, then Mando has to pressurize his helmet, and then he goes in by himself while Goku stays in the ship. Now, he doesn't even need the droid. He could just take the air samplings himself using the pressurized helmet. If it's fine, then he can go back and get Goku, and if it's not fine, then Goku stays in the ship anyways. The point here is that the droid is not fucking necessary in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
You can smell the shit from 5 miles away.
Mando heads into the cave to find the droid. He's immediately attacked by a group of primitive-looking alien cavemen, and Mando then proceeds to get his ass handed to him, and the only thing that keeps him alive is the ridiculous plot-reinforced Beskar armor. Eventually, he is able to use the Darksaber to take out the alien cavemen, but of course he stumbles around with it, swinging it wildly. He's barely able to wield the Darksaber. And once more, I need to point out that this is idiotic. The Darksaber is just another lightsaber with a different color blade. There is no weight to it. The idea that a person can't wield the Darksaber unless they're properly attuned to it is nonsense created by that moron Dave Filoni. It's not canon, and it is extremely stupid. What's worse is that this bullshit is going to be used to set up a dumb girl boss moment later on in the episode with Bo-Katan. Mando recovers the droid and brings it back to the ship. It displays that the air is perfectly fine and breathable and that there won't be any problems. Mando and Goku then go back into the cave, and we spend the next few minutes just watching them as they look around and go sightseeing.
Aurora Borealis.
As they're walking, Mando sees a helmet half buried in the ground and goes to investigate. Suddenly, a giant spider droid mech-looking thing spins out of the ground and captures Mando. Goku follows and tries to help, but is unable to free him. Mando tells Goku to get back to the ship and to seek out Bo-Katan. And now we get a payoff for some of that entirely contrived nonsense. Goku makes it back to the ship, the droid is able to pilot it to the other planet, and they're able to get help from Bo-Katan because she just happens to be in the same solar system. All of this is happening while Mando is trapped in a cage, and the alien thing is draining his blood or something. For Mando, this is treated as if it's only been maybe a few minutes, and yet we're supposed to believe that Goku made it back to the ship, flew to the other planet, got Bo-Katan's help, flew back to Mandalore, made it through the mines, found Mando, and all of this happened in what is kind of displayed as maybe being 15 or 20 minutes?
That is an entirely implausible plot development.
Yeah, something about that doesn't quite add up. Regardless, when Goku and Bo-Katan land on the planet, they enter the mines and they start searching for Mando. During this, they are attacked by another group of those caveman alien-looking things. However, this time, Bo-Katan is able to easily take them out with absolutely no effort whatsoever. You know, the same enemies that nearly killed Mando, and the only reason why he survived was because of his armor. Well, Bo-Katan barely even breaks a sweat because she's just amazing.
Yes, Queen, what?
But don't worry, it gets worse. When Bo-Katan finds Mando, she is attacked by the same alien thing, except now it's in a humanoid-sized droid body. She is able to very easily defeat it. And then the alien part gets disconnected and it goes back into the gigantic spider droid mech thing that had originally captured Mando. And this time, Bo-Katan struggles. Nah, I'm just kidding. She's a total girl boss. She uses the Darksaber and she easily destroys it with no effort whatsoever.
You're so gross!
You have to like it or you're sexist.
You know how Mando is always struggling when he uses the Darksaber and he just kind of flails around? Well, not Bo-Katan, because she's amazing and she perfectly uses it with no problems at all.
She was such a strong female woman.
Look, I'm not saying that the main character of a show should win every battle or be the best at everything. That would be boring. But Mando is now in Season 3, or 3.5 if you want to count his time during the Boba Fett series. And during all of that time, he has fought in quite a few battles and shown that he is a very capable warrior. But for some reason, in this episode, he seems to have completely forgotten everything there is to know about fighting. Of course, there is a very obvious reason for all of this happening. The people making this show at Disney are woke weirdos, and one of the rules that these weirdos have to follow is that female characters must always be significantly better than their male counterparts. They need to be stronger, faster, smarter, better fighters, better pilots, superior in every way possible. That is the unspoken rule that is modern Hollywood. That is how you end up with a situation where a battle-hardened veteran warrior like Mando is getting his ass kicked repeatedly, and Bo-Katan is just amazing and a girl boss who can do everything.
How dare you?
Regardless, the alien has been defeated, and the pathetic weak beta Mando has now been rescued. However, he says that he still needs to go on and find the waters in order to redeem himself. Bo-Katan thinks it's a waste of time, but she agrees to help him find it anyways. The episode manages to waste several more minutes with the characters sightseeing until they finally arrive at the underground pool of sacred water. We learn that Bo-Katan lived in the city for most of her early life before it was destroyed by the Empire, and she was raised to follow the creed of the Mandalorians. Specifically, this is the stupid nonsense that is supposed to prevent Mandalorians from removing their helmets, which again, I need to remind you, that is not a thing. It is not canon. At no point in the entire history of the Mandalorians was there ever such a thing that prevented them from moving their helmets. It is nonsense created by that idiot Dave Filoni.
If I'm being honest, pretty pissed off.
Bo-Katan drops a little bit of exposition about the history of the sacred pool, and she says that the first Mandalore supposedly saw some giant sea creature down there in the sacred waters, but she doesn't believe it, and she thinks that it's just a story. I want you to remember that, because it's going to come up in about a minute. Mando says that he needs to bathe in the sacred waters, so he removes most of his equipment, but leaves on his armor. He then starts walking into the water while reciting a Mandalorian oath. Because Mando is a complete moron in this episode, he doesn't pay any attention to where he's walking, and he just falls off a cliff. Because apparently it never occurred to him that the gigantic underground lake might be deeper than a bathtub. As he's falling, Bo-Katan dives in after him. She uses her jetpack to quickly get to the bottom. Don't ask me how the thrusters are supposed to be working underwater with this thing. I don't think the writers even know how this is supposed to work either. It just works because the scene needs it to.
It is kind of fascinating.
After a few moments, she finds Mando lying unconscious on the bottom, and I have to ask, why? Why would he be unconscious? There is no possible chance he could have gotten knocked out from this. Even though he was wearing his armor and he would have been sinking a little bit faster, he still would have been moving much too slow to get knocked out. He was also falling feet first, and he was wearing a Beskar helmet. His head was protected. There is a less than 0% chance that this fall would have knocked him unconscious.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
So why would he be unconscious? There's two reasons. First, it makes Bo-Katan look like more of a hero if she can rescue an unconscious, helpless Mando from the bottom. And second, the writers are trying to set up a situation that reinforces the idea that Bo-Katan is the one that's destined to be the true leader of the Mandalorian, and that she's so much better than everybody else, and that she deserves to be in charge. So they need to have Mando unconscious, because as she's swimming up to the top, she witnesses the giant mythical sea creature. And if Mando had also seen it, then it would have kind of reduced that impact. So by having Bo-Katan be the only one who saw the mythical creature, it makes her share a kind of similarity with the original Mandalore. So he was the one that saw the sea creature, and now she's seen it. Because if Mando had seen it as well, then all of that would have gotten messed up, and it wouldn't have been nearly as important.
Strange women lying in ponds, distributing swords is no basis for a system of government.
The two make it out of the water, and Bo-Katan is clearly stunned at what she just witnessed. It has shaken her faith, because remember, she thinks that all of it is just a made-up story, and that there was never any sort of mythical giant sea creature. But now that she has witnessed it firsthand, she believes it. And this is fucking stupid.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
Remember, Bo-Katan lived in this city for most of her life prior to its destruction by the Empire. She also has visited these sacred waters many, many, many times throughout her life. She had her own ceremony here. I'm sure she witnessed many other people have their own ceremonies there. She has been there many times. And you're telling me that nobody ever noticed the colossal sea creature that lives 200 feet down. All of the people that lived in the city, that came to the sacred waters, who lived all over this planet, who used these waters probably on a daily basis, nobody saw the giant sea creature.
I'm blind!
Everyone just thought it was a myth, or maybe it was just rumor or something. Even if it was just Bo-Katan who thought it was a myth, it doesn't make any sense. This is like having a blue whale that is living in your neighbor's backyard pool and not being aware that the whale is there. This absurdity is just like the giant alligator at the beginning of the first episode. How are you not aware that something that colossal is living 100 feet away from you? How do you not notice that?
Basically, kind of a big deal.
Looking at this episode, we have another situation where woke weirdo writers want to elevate a female character, and they do so by dragging down a male character, in this case, quite literally. Mando is pathetic. He's unable to defend himself. He needs to be rescued not once, but twice by Bo-Katan, who does so both times effortlessly. The motive of the show creators is painfully transparent, and just like Boba Fett was sidelined in his own show, I'm fairly certain that the star of Mandalorian Season 3 is going to end up being Bo-Katan, with special guest appearance by pathetic loser Mando. But thankfully, that's the end of Episode 2.
I'm taking shots at the enemy. I'm gonna make it to the top, leave a legacy. If I got something to say, you better let me speak. Turn it up a new degree, bitch, you ain't seen anything. I pop off with the new rock, electronic, blow the sonic roof up. I'm too honest when I take a few shots. They're too toxic, need to take the noose off.